How do you unzoom?
You can't. That's the one that doesn't zoom.
Oh, right.
So, today didn't go massively well. We saw the redwoods, we saw the Lost Coast, which was only about a 5-mile stretch. It took us like half an hour each way to even get to it. It wasn't good enough to justify going out there. So for the past hour or so, we've been driving in the direction of Shelter Cove, California, because I was under the impression for about 6 years now that my granddad lives in Shelter Cove. Turns out he doesn't live in Shelter Cove. He lives in Kelseyville, which is 100 miles that way. So it's officially time for a beer.
Gonna set up camp.
Connor's had to put up with my raging today. Mostly at bad drivers.
Actually, no, nearly all of it was directed at the windscreen thing. What's it called?
Oh, with the sun visor?
Yeah, it's nearly all of it directed. I got beaten today. I got abused.
Every time we went over a bump, the sun visor kept falling down in my face and it was just like,
bloody sun visor!
I don't think I said that, did I?
Several times.
Actually.
The strange thing about leaving was although I would miss the people I was with and the place itself, I'd most of all miss the person I was now, at this time and place, because I'd never be this way ever again.
Well, I suppose that means the day wasn't a complete waste.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, I better stop filming.
My name is Marcus, and in 2016, I spent a year in America.
Alright, turn the thing on. Yeah.
Is the microphone on?
Yeah.
Alright, well just let me know when you're ready.
Even before setting off, I had countless expectations of what it would feel like to be so far from home and how life-changing a journey it could really be. But as tends to happen with life-changing journeys, it would soon turn out I wasn't even close. When it came time to return home, it wasn't a question of the places living up to my expectations, but this movie I was making, and how it could possibly reflect my own experiences of a country that I had dreamed of visiting since childhood. I was afraid of losing the person I thought I was. If I took what I had documented and turned it into something tangible and real, my only memories would be of that, and I would forget what it actually felt like. But I realised after a while that, like it or not, time does this to us anyway. And as with so many things, you just have to do the best you can with what you have. So, this is what I have now. This was us. This was America.
When you hear the roll of the coming wind, tell me if you know that a storm is in. Rustling your hair and a touch of skin. You must think that I lost in the end.
Yeah, this is my first signing in thing on my video diary in America because we've just arrived in Stony Brook. I'm with Brian. Do you want to film, Brian?
Sure.
This is Brian, I think. Yeah, I've just got
It's new to me too, actually. I've never been this far up in New York, let alone on Long Island. I'm learning too.
I'm just amazed by all the wooden houses and fire hydrants. And now we're going to hopefully find my hall of residence. Very exciting.
This is so cool. Like, I'm so excited that you're here. You have no idea.
I'm very excited that I'm here. Didn't think I'd make it this far. Just having a quick look around the campus. First successful shopping trip. According to Brian, this is a very big Target. Target being a sort of, what is it? Sorted out my US bank account, that's all done now. Got a couple of contacts on my new mobile phone, and now we're going to be going to Port Jefferson for a look round.
This was my third year at university, which I was choosing to spend as an exchange student in New York, and having just turned 20, I felt ready for whatever it could throw at me. It didn't matter that I'd barely been abroad before. Adjusting to American life in the grand scheme of things didn't seem too challenging.
You buy a 12-pack of noodles for $2.
Welcome to Stony Brook University.
Oh my god, it's so perfect. You see it on movies all the time, and then you see it in person.
However, after attempting to buy some alcohol like I had been doing for 2 years already, I began to realise I may have assumed too much.
During a party in an illegal off-campus rental with 400 people there.
Went to my first frat party last night.
The 10-foot-high deck collapsed at this East Setauket house as hundreds of college students partied late into the night, celebrating move-in day.
It fell about 20 feet and everybody on it, myself included. I don't think anybody was badly hurt. There were a couple of people who were shocked. From there we actually walked home. It took about another hour to get back to the campus.
It's insanity. It's absolute insanity.
Here's my love and you seem so frail. The stars were bright and the moon was pale.
But here's the city, and man, it's an adventure. Getting here is the biggest accomplishment of my day, really.
You're filling me with confidence saying all of this, you know?
So you can actually end up going from my house to that station, and then you walk this way, past that building with the crane on it, to get to Drexel University. That building that says Drexel University is actually the same building that our film department's in. We've filmed many a school project here. The street, they have it's kind of, they understand it to be more of like a European.
No doors, no windows, no roof.
Hey, at least we have a windshield. Yeah. They're regular glaze, chocolate with chocolate cream, regular glaze with Jimmy's, no filling.
Brian was my first point of contact in the States and part of the reason I went out there, as I was writing music for his documentary at the time.
You lost me at like second one.
But what's funny in some ways is apart from him, most of the friends I would make over the coming months weren't American.
I think we have one in the north end, but
They're in like
That's a really bad distribution of wow, I've got this. Yeah.
I suppose it made sense that I seemed to have more in common with the other exchange students. Everyone I spoke to in those first weeks was just as conscious of the time limit set upon us and how best to use it, a problem most Americans didn't have to worry about.
It's 4 o'clock in the morning and I am now off to Washington DC with some friends for a couple of days to see the city.
For me, making the most of the months ahead revolved around my love of movies and writing music for them.
This is Marcus with our video diary of our trip to France.
Hi, Marcus.
And we're waiting for the ferry.
I'd spent my entire childhood making family videos, short films and songs to go with them, and now here I was on the biggest movie set in the entire world, with a camera in my hands and 10 months ahead.
Hamish, would you be kind enough to explain what's happening at the moment?
We just came from the lighthouse. We sat on the beach for a few hours on Pebble Beach and we had a bunch of conversations and it was really great. And now we've gotten in our red car, and we have come to the main street of Montauk and we're going to get some much needed food and then make a choice on whether we're going to go to the Dragon Boat Regatta.
I have the wrong lens on the camera, so I'm going to be very close, but we've been driving around today trying to find somewhere nice, and here we are, and it's just lovely. Just white sand, lovely warm ocean, blue sky. Yeah, feeling pretty good. Okay, so first official update from Stony Brook University, and I don't even really know where to begin. There's been so many insane things happening, and I'm barely keeping up with it. But yeah, I've just been having an amazing time so far. Americans are very strange, and their supermarkets are even stranger. I went into Walmart the other day, and I could buy a tub of cheese puffs this big, but no fresh vegetables at all. So if that's not an indicator of what America is like, then I don't know what is. I have to admit that like so far I've not been doing a very good job of filming things. Everything's been happening so quickly, and it's just been so insane that I don't think I've really kept on top of it. But from now on I'm going to try to do a better job and keep you updated with what I'm up to in America. Looking forward to whatever happens next.
But despite the excitement, I knew I was still missing a key component. As I started to get to know my fellow exchange students and realise how much there was to experience even just by going out for the day, I thought about the scale of this enormous country and what it meant for my film. So far, I was relying on public transport, hire cars, and Brian to get around. But after years of watching classic American road trip movies, which led to years of dreaming about classic American cars, I knew this would have to change. Having grown up on a farm and being taught to drive at the age of 12, the first thought I had about going to the States was that it might finally be the opportunity to buy a classic car of my own. I decided it was time to find out for certain.
Midnight in a 7-Eleven, late summer at a college by the sea.
Okay, it's the beginning of homecoming weekend and I'm going to meet some friends. And I've actually been to Port Jefferson today to have a look at something rather special.
It's 5.4 miles away.
I explained my plans to the internet and received an email from a police officer who wanted to help. His name was Paul, and after seeing my budget, I think he probably took pity on me a little. We met up for lunch, spent a day looking at cheap cars, and have been friends ever since.
Going off to its new home.
We are here on what is quite potentially the most British day since I've been here. And I'm at my friend Paul's house, who helped me buy a car, and here it is.
It's an 85 Mercury Grand Marquis. Bought it right from Port Jeff, so it hadn't really traveled far most of its life. It's a real solid car.
We just need to take the petrol out, take the fuel tank out, and then we need to change the thing over and then see if it works. And if it does work, that means we need to get brakes for it and other stuff, and a battery. Morning.
Surprisingly enough, my $500 wasn't quite enough to buy a Ford Mustang, but instead you could get a somewhat boring gas guzzler from a forgotten decade of US automotive history that didn't work.
Paul, would you be kind enough to demonstrate how the wheel is?
So the next 2 weeks were spent getting a car that had sat for 12 years in a field back on the road.
We are putting the fuel tank back in.
That's the rust and everything.
Rust from tank.
This is vegetable oil.
So after 4 trips to the DMV, I officially have a car in New York. First stage is complete.
Marcus? Oh, you fucking shitting me.
Good, trust me, if you were blocking, I swear away.
Nobody knew you left.
How's it looking?
Yeah, gonna have this car running tonight. Hey, you better never get another piece of shit like this again. So I swear to fucking God. I don't know what you want to do here.
Oh, that's not good. I thought it smelled burning.
The 3 of us have bumbled this car together in the span of a week.
Yeah.
So we can do it.
And we have basically replaced the entire fuel system.
So despite all this work, he's gonna drive this around and have a fucking awesome time.
You know what? He's gonna drive this car around. It's gonna last you for 20 years until you get old and die.
That's right.
We're moving. We'll be able to see.
Whoa, no brakes.
It's working. God, I can smell burning rubber.
That, and she seems to be doing all right.
Yeah, so we're good. We start slowing down now. So, initial impressions.
It needs a little work, but it moves. And you can tell she runs good. It's just she doesn't know what the fuck she's doing right now.
Parking brake. Yep. I was like, oh, your parking brake shit. I disagree.
Who said that?
The tow truck man. Feels a bit funny, but just the steering feels a little bit like it hasn't. Feels a bit like it's not used to steering. And I'm guessing that's probably because the brakes are still slightly seized on that side. No, that's a new disc. Yeah, maybe the brakes are still slightly dodgy from something. I've also just realised that I have no credit left on my phone, so if something does happen, I literally have no way of contacting Paul unless I find the nearest house and ask to use somebody's telephone.
It wasn't quite the triumphant first journey I'd imagined, but it was the first journey in my car, on a US highway, one step in the direction of achieving my dreams. And yes, there was probably going to be some minor teething issues, but provided I kept on top of everything, I didn't see it as being anything to worry about.
Well,
I have run out of fuel. Wait, oh my god. Hamish, you need more steering. The Mercury is in Stony Brook. It's been nearly 3 weeks since I bought it, and now, hopefully, it is working well enough to get us to Boston. Because we're going tomorrow morning, and we're going for the entire weekend. About a 7-hour journey. The car has probably driven about 10 miles since I bought it, and before that, it hadn't moved in 12 years. So it's a bit touch and go.
We gotta make sure the car's gonna work for the journey. Old mate's hands are very dirty, and the response is, it's just tranny fluid, we'll be alright.
And so began my first official road trip, which brought with it the next set of problems. For most 20-year-old students, budget is a bit of an ongoing concern, and even though I was beginning to receive some income from my music, if I was to go through with the plans I had in mind for later that year, I would need to balance out the cost of parts and petrol.
The car did it. And we made it to our beach house.
Yes.
Yes.
So, in true student fashion, the first thing to be sacrificed was comfort.
Yeah, the power is power.
No, we need to turn it on the switch box on the side.
Oh, so what's up?
Is it 2 per bed?
Oh. Hello. Is anyone down here?
The second was convenience, because although our accommodation on the coast of Massachusetts was much more affordable than anywhere in Boston, it meant I had to ferry 8 people back and forth in multiple trips.
It is 10 p.m. and I've been napping for 2 hours because we are now going to Boston to pick up 2 of our friends who are commuting over on the bus.
We got our beers.
We've got our beers.
We got our music.
Yeah, there was a severe weather warning. Off to Boston we go, an hour journey or so.
Like everyone else, I would have originally preferred to stay in the city, but as I drove through that storm with the dodgy windscreen wiper and only 2 working brake discs, I started to realise the limitations were actually making the experience more exciting. So, by the time we headed into Boston the next day, I'd come to the conclusion I didn't mind the extra hassle.
Boston, we are here. We made it. It is 3:29 p.m. Finally we made it, and we got the arches right on the left of me.
First time I was picking people up, second time I was dropping them off, third time I'm actually staying. And already I can see it's just a really, really beautiful city. All the buildings are nice, the streets are clean, there's loads of interesting people about. It's just fantastic. Oh, crossing. All right. Yes!
Got a hectic fucking police chasing the fucking...
That was the noisiest fucking 5 minutes of my life.
All in all, I felt quite at home in Boston, but it was surprisingly cold, and once we eventually decided we'd had enough, no one was particularly keen to be in the second carload back to the beach house.
So right now what's happening is I'm taking my coat off, and they're all taking their coat off because we have 8 people for a 6-person car.
Right, now one last question. Does anyone have earphones?
Good luck, any last words?
This might be the last you see of me, but you know.
Thanks. Are you recording or what's happening?
Yeah, I'm recording.
Oh, you're recording? Okay, yeah.
I think it would be fair to say that I woke up the next morning a little worse for wear, however there was plenty to celebrate. By this point, I'd driven over 200 miles in the Mercury, and what's more, it hadn't been as difficult as I'd expected, despite having to constantly top up the transmission fluid. So, whilst everyone celebrated Jack surviving in the boot for an hour, I also celebrated the success of the weekend, because even though we'd made it as far as Boston, for me, the journey had only just begun.
Hey, Marcus. Hey, wake up, Marcus.
You say what you are, but you know know that I want to. Left a part of myself in California.
Over the following few weeks, it really did feel like America had opened up before me. Every weekend was now an opportunity to go somewhere, and life on campus no longer seemed very interesting. All the exchange students were getting the hang of things, and the more we learnt about how things worked, the better we got at bending the rules a little. On the off chance I ever got bored, the car was developing one problem after another, and it was anyone's guess if we'd actually get to our destination or not.
The car won't start.
From a pretty face and a loaded gun.
You want to stop you?
No, I do not, sorry.
You didn't stop at the stop sign right there.
Nevertheless, I continued moving forwards, ironing out the bumps, and in the process discovered I'd made some friends along the way.
Remember that? Hey, do you remember that?
No, you have to go on these.
So many people.
We just got lit up by the cops.
It's been 2 months since I arrived in America. Incredible. It feels like it was only yesterday that I got here. And so far, it has just been amazing.
But it was some time after meeting everyone else that I got to know Connor.
Alright, we're going to New York. We're going to go to Brooklyn Bridge to get a video of Marcus's brothers fucking fucked up.
That was good enough. Yeah.
Brooklyn Bridge,
What was the other place?
Designated Railway Park, and Bicycle.
If there was ever proof that travel can bring the most unlikely people together, it was this.
Thought I can handle spicy food. Can you handle that?
I never expected to get on so well with someone who was so outwardly different to me. Connor was from Reading, a somewhat lively town on the outskirts of London, and I was from a small village in the countryside called Urchfont. And yet, even though we apparently had nothing in common, I would soon realise he was one of the most reliable people I would ever meet, extremely funny, and when it came to the idea of going on a road trip across America, he was on the exact same page I was.
Which one's the Chrysler building? Do you know?
The tall one.
Oh yeah, great.
The really tall one.
There we go.
We're in this really cool part of New York. Just come away from the Brooklyn Bridge. It's got a lot of old pubs, a lot of rusty metal, and not a peanut vendor in sight.
Incredibly, I managed to make it all the way to November before taking the 2-hour train ride into New York City. It was probably because it was close by that I'd put it off, waiting for a weekend where I had no other plans. But when I finally got there, I realised just how many amazing things it seemed I had been missing out on.
Nowhere else in the world does fucking steam just come out of random places, does it?
Boston had it a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, you mean like America, yeah. There's something going on down the road here as well.
This place was an assault on the senses. Stepping out of Penn Station onto 7th Avenue, I was hit by a wave of noise, smells, and the feeling that if I stood still for even 1 second, I'd be knocked over by all the chaos.
And it wouldn't be New York if there wasn't at least one angry taxi driver.
Everywhere we went, I was craning my neck up at the buildings, dodging the variety of bizarre characters we kept bumping into, and pointing my camera at pretty much everything. I'd only been there a day, but it was already, without a doubt, the most spectacular city I'd ever seen. But that's not to say it was perfect.
You see that sign that says 31st? It might help if you actually just look up and look at the sign.
I'm at night. I know I'm at night. See the fucking sign.
Webster Hall wanted to charge us $25 to get in, and then at 10 p.m. it becomes $21 too late. And everywhere else has got a bouncer on the door, so it's really, really awkward to get in anywhere.
The city closing itself off from me was a big problem, which, as the night wore on, began to feel quite unwelcoming. I eventually came to the conclusion that visiting for a few nights with some money, a local guide, and a valid ID would be the best way to experience the place, but I had none of these 3 things, so as it was, there and then, I didn't fall in love with New York like so many people do.
How's your ice cream?
Delicious. I swear you know that.
No, I didn't.
How do you know that?
What is it?
Oh no.
I feel like a frog or
Yeah,
something.
no,
It was like a frog.
I was beginning to understand that what I'd remember most clearly about America wasn't the stuff you'd normally film, like the sights in the city, but small and unexpected details that made it very different to home, such as autumn turning cold much faster and its colours being much more vivid. We enjoyed them one last time before the leaves fell.
Oh my god, there's a whole entourage.
Before I'd arrived at Stony Brook, I was already aware that many exchange students would only be staying until Christmas and not returning in January. But even so, with the end of the semester fast approaching, it still felt like I'd only just got to know everyone. I decided not to think about it too much.
We're here by the beach, and we're trying to find what are we doing here?
Trying to find a toilet, actually.
And we're going on an adventure. Yay!
My family and extended family are all coming over for Thanksgiving dinner. So we're basically doing 2 gigantic dinners. 21 people are supposed to show up. So that'll be interesting because we've never had this many people before. And it's always chaotic around the house. We'll see how it goes.
This is our apartment in Brooklyn for the night. And it's Lydia's birthday.
Out of all the trips organised that semester, Brooklyn was probably the most significant, as it was the only time everyone in our circle of friends made it.
If you've got something on it, it needs to
Pumping the air mattress back on.
Oh my god, I've never seen you so excited.
I'm so happy!
It's going to be a good night. That's going to be a great night.
It's like 9 p.m. and already everybody's completely...
We're already back in bed. We're not even going out until 11 o'clock, but you know what? 6 hours is going to be fucking
We're
late.
gonna look for a free nightclub for us to get in. Hopefully everyone that ID can get in, and yeah, it's gonna be super fucking special.
Yeah.
Did you record that?
Looking back, it was a student party just like any other, complete with plans falling apart, noise complaints, and the usual mess and disorder.
Happy fucking birthday. Someone left hot dogs right there. I'm going to clean it right up. The awkwardness is rising. Fucking seriously.
Everything's up in the air at the moment because the landlady might kick us out if she doesn't like us. The fact that she's turned up at this time of night is kind of worrying. Yet despite nearly everything going wrong, it was one of my favourite nights of the entire year. As aside from being tremendous fun, it was the moment I realised just how much our first experiences of America had brought us together. The first snow I experienced that year was a routine inconvenience to New Yorkers and a complete novelty to me. In fact, it was already on par with the snowiest winters I'd ever seen. But it still wasn't quite enough to distract me from a somewhat depressing atmosphere creeping in as students completed their exams and disappeared for the holidays.
Okay, we're MPs now.
The time had come to say goodbye, which of course was done in the usual fashion. For some, this just meant until after Christmas. Others, it meant possibly forever. I think a few of us knew we'd see each other again, but at the same time our paths had led us from backgrounds and lives that would never normally cross, and it was unlikely to happen a second time.
Thank you for the journey, my man. It's been the biggest pleasure to get to know you. You're a very kind man. I love your ambition, and we click so fucking well together. I love you, man. How do you miss out?
And so, whilst everyone was heading off for the holidays, all for good, I was bracing myself for a winter in New York. Even if I had the funds to fly home, making the most of my year in America meant experiencing it from beginning to end, in its entirety, with all its ups and downs. At least that was the thought process.
But I do have my cup of tea in a Batman cup, so things aren't all up there, and it is snowing, which is pretty cool. For me, anyway.
Fortunately, I received an invitation from Brian in Philadelphia that I had to attend to.
Okay, so I put it in reverse and we're not going anyway. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, it's a winter day.
It's clean. That's all it is. Okay.
I don't believe that story, Lou, for a second.
What? What?
Getting old sucks. I'm old and I enjoy it.
I do too.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
There is so much that is different and yet so much the same about an American family gathering on an occasion like this. The generosity, humour and absolute chaos in the house made me feel as welcome as if I'd been there for Christmas 20 times already. And when it was over, I found I wasn't ready to go back to New York just yet.
Apparently now. Okay, good night all. Thank you.
Good night, Merry Christmas.
So, at the very last minute, I changed my plans and the direction I was heading.
Here's the situation. I am somewhere in North Carolina in a rest stop on the side of Interstate 95. I would probably say I'm past the halfway point to Florida, but I can't say for certain because I actually have no clue where I am. So yeah, this is going to be my first night actually sleeping in the car. I'm kind of interested to see how it will pan out. With any luck, I won't get murdered. I looked at the map this morning. After 11 hours of driving, I am just outside Fayetteville, which is down here. So Jacksonville is there. So I've pretty much done maybe just over halfway in 11 hours.
You never call a place your home. You try to take it on your own. We level to the break of day, but we always fade away. When everything is said and done, when we go like everyone, I could be at work too late, or in the sunshine still.
A storm broke out, and it sheeted it down briefly, and now it's just raining.
I had taken the opportunity to meet up with Aiden, Dan and Elsa, 3 friends from back home doing their exchange year in Jacksonville.
This is winter.
We'd spoken about meeting up before, but it was not until Christmas Eve I'd thought to check if they were in America over the holidays, and needless to say, I'm glad I did.
We are ready to go to Miami for the weekend.
I'm indifferent.
Rolling on a rapid road with a dusty desert heat, hauling on a heavy load with a rusty metal sheet.
I was also cheered up not only by how much distance I'd covered in just 2 days, but how much potential that meant there was for the second semester.
It wouldn't be a weekend away with friends if we didn't get a beer shot.
You never call a place your own. You try to take it on your own. We level till the break of day, but we always fade away.
Oh my god, this is amazing. Look at it.
Here is some more large buildings.
Okay, we did it. The window's stuck down and we can't put it back up.
Things would be different, but I wasn't necessarily worried.
New Year's Eve of 2016 starts.
Because even though it would be more solitary than before, there was still another 6 months of exploring ahead, and the rest of America to discover. A few days later, I made the return journey to Long Island. I had been away 2 weeks and gladly would have stayed 2 weeks more, but had a music commission that needed working on and would hopefully finance the next semester. Not that that was much consolation.
Pulled over at a rest area at 1 a.m. this morning after driving for about 14 hours. And this is what I've woken up to. It's snowing.
Alright, so it's Monday the 22nd of January. People are moving back in. I just wanted to mention, before I start videoing everything here again, how grateful I am and how appreciative I am of the friends that I made here in the first semester. The ones that I might not see again for quite a while. Because a lot of them have helped shape the way that I view the world and the way that I experience my time here in such a positive manner, it's undescribable. It's going to be interesting to see what it's going to be like this semester. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of new people to meet and plenty of amazing experiences. But it's not going to be quite the same.
My fear!
I continued in much the same way as usual, having decided that if I kept busy, it would take my mind off how isolated America now felt.
God, that's pretty flipping quick.
However, the remaining exchange students were disappearing into studies and budget was at an all-time low, so my heart wasn't really in it, and having not been paid for my music yet, I was travelling less often and not as far for a while. There were a couple of short weekends away in February, but what truly renewed my enthusiasm was spending time with Connor, going over the ideas we had back in autumn about a road trip across America. At this point, we'd become much more certain of what we wanted to do, as we both had a free month at the end of the semester before our visas expired.
Oh mate, we went to Washington. That's one White House, that's fucking another White House. And what?
But although we were looking forward to it, I was beginning to see a minor complication.
What the fuck? Maybe it struggled up the hill.
Yeah, it didn't like the hill very much, it seems.
My journey to Florida had been a success in the end, but the one we had in mind would be several times longer, and as the list of problems with the Mercury grew, it was not something to be taken lightly. So we decided to use the American spring break to test the waters.
Big fucking shot.
Do we need our passports?
That's what I was just thinking, actually. I don't think we will.
You don't think we will? Think we should go? You don't think we will, or do you know that we won't?
Well, how pissed do you plan to go to Mexico?
Well, no, I mean, like, because sometimes accommodations need a passport.
Oh, no, you won't need a passport for that, I don't think. We've got ideas anyway.
You sure?
Yeah.
Alright.
Connor, do you want to tell us your thoughts?
What's his thoughts? Because that Cindy's fucking let us down.
It seemed the car did not share our enthusiasm for the trip. One of the wheel bearings had melted into the axle, seizing up the entire wheel on that side and exploding the tyre. The only thing we could do was get to the nearest repair shop and wait until morning.
If you lock the doors, the alarm doesn't go up.
It doesn't have an alarm.
Alright, sound.
So, update on the trip to New Orleans. We made it as far as Tennessee.
Which was our goal.
We did plan to get to Tennessee and then sleep in the car.
But we didn't plan for the tyre to pop.
We didn't plan for it to be in this situation, no. But yeah, anyway, that will be tomorrow and that will sort itself out. But for now, beer.
Beer and crying ourselves to sleep.
It took nearly 8 hours for the Mercury to be repaired, which I planned to make up for by driving through the night. However, less than 60 miles later, I realised we'd missed something important that should have been obvious.
It's 6:30 on Monday. We were supposed to be in New Orleans by now, and we have had to pull over in another rest area because the car has started acting up again. Before it was that wheel bearing that broke and then exploded the tyre, and now this wheel bearing's going bad.
Unlike the first time, I'd noticed it before any serious damage was caused, so it was a simple fix the next morning to get us back on the road. And when the mechanics refused to accept any money, Connor and I were put in a good mood that lasted all the way to New Orleans, as there couldn't have been a better time to encounter some southern hospitality.
In a bit, homies.
When you faded in the daylight, I could take you away. 'Cause I'm chasing what I can't find. Then I'll make it, if I make it, I'll stay.
Alright, so this looks really nice, but we're basically going to be living in the basement. So we're going to go and get some milk, have some cereal, and then look for a Bene.
Yep.
Yeah, got it.
Just like the neon lights in Vegas. Now we're strangers and I'm holding on to you. Stay till you're sober and I don't mind. Say that it's over, we could work it out.
Due to the setbacks of the journey, we only had 4 days in New Orleans, which we could already tell wouldn't be long enough. In many ways, I found this city to be the opposite of New York, with bright, colourful streets, plenty of fresh air, and a welcoming, relaxed pace of life. The French Quarter was exactly as we expected it to be, the roots of jazz still a major part of everyday life and celebrated as part of the city's identity.
Right, the authentic first New Orleans experience. The Begnet.
It's like a donut.
It was touristy at times, but it wasn't exactly difficult to see why.
$2 beers. Couldn't ask for a much better place to drink one either.
But later on, walking through the quiet back streets, the place took on a different character.
That's in their ostriches. Is that on one leg?
Step there.
We learnt the true New Orleans was the pastel-coloured concrete of the suburbs, a cardboard box full of spicy crawfish, and a $2 beer with a po' boy sandwich, sitting on a curbside in the afternoon sun. It was everything I'd wanted to go travelling for, discovering and filming these parts of American culture that wouldn't necessarily be the first to come to mind, unlike the statues in the Capitol or the lights in Times Square. And when night fell, New Orleans took on a different character yet again.
We're at a cool bar in Magazine Street in New Orleans. We're having a few beers, and we're about to go to Frenchman District and see some quality New Orleans jazz.
We walked, ate and drank, and enjoyed St. Patrick's Day like typical English tourists.
I just need a good kebab house. That's like the best thing you need right there.
It was over all too soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Jumbo Shrimp Jazz Band. How's everybody doing tonight? I'd like to hear another little tune, over 100 years old. It was called the Panama Rag. Next, we're going to do a tune from 1927. It's called the Mississippi Run.
Yet despite everything, there was still the glaring problem.
Really wobbling, like badly. So we pull over just before a toll booth in New Jersey.
If it had been the second or even third time the Mercury had disrupted some plans, it wouldn't have been unreasonable to continue with ours as it was. But the reality I was finally beginning to face was, although it had been an affordable car in October, I was paying the price for it now.
And besides that, the rear brakes don't work at all. We need new rear brakes. It's leaking fuel over the ground at the back. It's leaking diff oil. It's leaking engine oil at the front because of leaky valve covers. The fuel gauge doesn't work.
The irony was most of its major issues came from electronic parts, making it too old to be reliable, but too modern to be an easy repair on the side of the road. So, by late March, and once again with Paul's help, the decision was made.
Well, you can probably see that the setting for this update video is in a slightly different place to normal. And that's because I have a new car.
Against what many would consider to be my better judgment, not to mention my overdraft, I was essentially going back to square one again. But I maintain there was some logic behind this. Aside from the fact it could already run and drive, this 1978 Lincoln was bigger, more comfortable, and being 7 years older than the Mercury, fundamentally simpler, needing just a few basic tools for most repairs.
Apparently this is where all the lobster boats sell the lobsters, so let's see if we can buy something.
Yeah, we do seem to be struggling a bit.
Nobody eats lobster in Bar Harbor, Maine in the winter. Apparently nobody is here in the winter.
I guess so, but it's not actually winter technically. We're in April now.
Apparently winter is from mid-October till mid-May.
Yeah, let's go back down.
It had been a difficult choice, but it felt like I'd made the right one. And with everything I'd learned over the past few months, as well as the distance I'd travelled, I believed I was ready for the final step. I still had 4 weeks filled with exams to get through, but for one last weekend trip, the journey to Maine was the perfect escape. When it came to the few friends who were still left from the first semester, it seemed we were always tied up with studying or completely broke, especially after 8 months abroad. But I still wished things could have ended differently. It felt like we never properly said goodbye.
Yeah. That was good.
Good?
Yeah, it was.
Nevertheless, as I came to the end of my exams, my mind was elsewhere.
Okay, so, testing?
I'm testing.
There was some debate over which national monuments were worth visiting, the ways money could be saved, and the number of consequences there would be for pitching a tent on the side of the road. Even with the cost shared between us, we could only afford accommodation for about half the trip. The rest would have to be improvised.
G101F in Stony Brook. I still have a lot of shit to get through, so I'm going to get back to it.
Go.
Are you ready?
Sort of.
It seemed like only 5 minutes had passed since I'd arrived at Stony Brook, but like most students at the end of a school year, I couldn't wait to leave. So, on the 14th of May 2017, Connor and I packed our bags for good and headed out for our great American road trip.
Is the microphone on?
Yeah.
Alright, well just let me know when you're ready.
Action.
The time is 10:30 a.m. and we are in California.
Right, we're in the Teton National Park.
Second issue so far, we've got more coolant leaking out.
I mean, it's no harm done.
Hello, mate.
Alright, I think we might be in the clear.
This final journey would take us to all of the things in America we'd been wanting to see our whole lives. Through Chicago, west to Seattle, then down the Pacific coast to San Francisco.
Just another day in mid-September, I was thinking of you. I was thinking of a place I remember and a song we journeyed to.
Heading east, we'd stop in at Las Vegas, Colorado via the Grand Canyon, then loop round through Memphis and Nashville. And to make it back to New York in time for Connor's flight home, all of this had to be accomplished in 36 days. We said goodbye to the familiarity of the East Coast and headed into Pennsylvania. The first major stop of the trip was 800 miles away in Chicago.
Camera? Yep, of course. Well, whereabouts are we? Roughly about halfway through Pennsylvania?
I think we're about 5 hours away from Ohio, our original destination.
Yeah. Whereabouts are we going to get there?
At like 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Good.
Alright.
More mistakes than I'll ever admit, but they faded when the sunlight hit.
So what are we doing, Marcus?
Making our first repair. So, I'm going to look at the front and there's just this one hose that's just got a crack in it and it's not attached to the engine properly, it's just gushing out. Tried tightening it, but the actual hose was cracked. So, new hose, $7. I don't even want to go to the boot.
I know I belong back there in this road I'm traveling, it goes nowhere. You tell me that I'm stuck in the past, but the signs are telling me I'm going too fast.
We've just found a random place to sleep for the night.
In a quarry somewhere. We're waiting to get in trouble.
Alright. I don't want to smell your feet.
Don't want to smell your feet either.
Right, see you tomorrow morning. Pump, get the fuel started, and it really helps to drive the car when the bonnet is shut.
I didn't notice that, but I thought this was a training technique.
Yeah. First you must learn to feel the car.
Yeah.
Over there, back onto the road. Start up top of now and gently braking with your toe. Turn right into the church. Try and go onto the bit that looks like a road. Yeah. Try not to run over too many plants if you can help it. I'd like to keep it. Okay. Go ahead. Try your right foot a little bit. There you go. Much better.
This driving life is easy.
Can we leave it all tomorrow? Can we do it all again? Can we do the things we dream of?
This is Handy Dandy. Has been a family-owned business since 1925.
Can we leave it all tomorrow? Can we do it all again? Can we do the things we're dreaming about? 'Cause the years are going quicker than they were back then.
Alright, so we made it to Chicago. And there is our house for the next evening. I'm kind of partly glad that we're only staying for half the time we originally planned.
Yeah, it's not a great loss, is it?
Having arrived late in the day, there wasn't time to see much, so we had to stick to just the essentials.
I reckon that's one of my favourite pizzas I've ever had.
Yeah, I would say so too.
To make matters worse, we'd accidentally chosen accommodation in Englewood, which made walking around after dark an unexpectedly stressful task.
I mean, honestly, it's not the best looking place, so hopefully we'll be alright. He's a little bit worried. I feel like we can trust the people of America not to harm us.
No, I'm shitting myself. I'm just pissing myself.
That's right. It's not that far. It's like 2 blocks.
It's 10-minute walk.
10-minute walk, maximum.
What was the experience you had last night?
About 4 gunshots went off. About 1 o'clock in the morning. 10 seconds later, the whole clip was emptied.
Seriously?
But the rest of the experience, on camera at least, made up for it, and we weren't put off.
Fucking gunshots.
Focus. I love this city. I really wish we spent more time here. It's so cool. I gotta admit, in terms of all the cities in the US I've visited, New York really isn't that. It's awesome. It's all-ring, if that makes any sense. All-ring. It's
Yeah,
all inspiring. But is it nice? Here's
not trash everywhere like there is in New York.
Yeah, it's
Like
grimy and
beanbags.
smelly. Whereas I don't know, all these other cities, they're just. And although the thing is, you looking at New York is always amazing because it's always just insane the way it looks. You're always looking up at the buildings, and the buildings are incredible.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I think just everything is just better looking.
I did actually fall in love with New York a bit when I stayed there for a week.
Yeah.
Just because the area in was so cool.
Oh, maybe that's the thing. I've seen the touristy stuff. Not so nice areas.
Head south on North Clark Street toward West Illinois Street.
We'd soon start to notice the recurring theme of the trip, where we never seemed to be in any destination for as long as we would have liked. I expect this was mostly due to the transient nature of road trips and our strict schedule, but there were probably other reasons too.
Just calling ahead, I'm just wondering, do you have radiator hoses for a 1978 Lincoln Continental? Alright, thank you.
So the car's leaking coolant again. What we're going to do is go to AutoZone, which is around 20 miles away or so. And we figured as we're off the interstate already, we might as well just sort of go a slow back way and see Wisconsin a little bit. It's not too bad. Yeah, like we should be okay. Oh shit! It's okay, it's not bad. It's looking out of the headlight.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Fucking hell, we've got a river underneath.
Oh, you know what it is?
What? Ooh.
I didn't put the cap on, so it's been literally gushing out.
Alright, we learned a lesson today. Put the cap on.
I'm surprised we haven't like started overheating yet. What a freaking idiot!
Oh, that's one other thing. If you're going south,
Yeah.
through the desert,
Yeah.
make sure you got water with you, drinking water.
Oh yes, yeah, of course.
Alright guys, be safe, good luck. Safe travel.
Just before we were about to leave, some random guy with his daughter, his 8-year-old daughter, and him come up and start talking to us about the car. And he has all these suggestions for us, places to go and everything. He's like, oh, it's a cool car and all that kind of thing. And then he just gives us a sat nav. Just gives us the GPS. What a nice guy.
So, despite a few setbacks, the first 3 days had put us in high spirits, and we even went against our plans by going to a motel.
And we're drinking some sort of delicious ale. Can't remember what it is. Remember what it's called?
No, had a funny name.
It had a funny name.
But the next morning, guilty for the unnecessary expense, Connor and I firmly agreed as we drove through Minnesota that wherever we got to that night, we would be camping.
Tonight, showers and thunderstorms, 55. Tomorrow, cloudy, a chance of morning showers, 58.
I think we can give it a try, maybe? It's getting dark. It's just so cold today as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, by the way, thank you.
That's alright.
Thank you. Alright, turning off onto Avenue 395. We're near the town of Mount something.
Fuck, I don't know. I don't know.
Some small town in South Dakota.
It's less windy than it is everywhere else. We're sheltered by the trees here.
Yeah, but it's very Blair Witch Project. Especially this camera as well.
I think I should beep the horn. If somebody comes running at us, then we run. Right. Keep an eye on the door.
Right. Blair Witch. Alright, I don't see any crazy demons or spirits.
Just thinking some old mad guy's gonna come running out with a freaking shotgun or something.
Alright, I think we might be in the clear. I can't see anyone in the windows.
Yeah. Alright.
Instead of making a tent and putting all our stuff into the tent so we can see from the car, we're going to put all our stuff in this shed over there.
And this is where we are. In here is all the clothes and everything. And we're hoping that nobody comes along and tells us off. Oh! Connor!
What?
There's a teddy bear on the ground!
I know, I saw that. I didn't want to mention it.
I'm not touching it. Because I've just realised something. If for some reason some weirdo does come along and kill us with a shotgun, nobody's going to know we're here. This car will sit and rust away and nobody will ever find us.
Luckily you're worried about the car.
I'm worried about the car rusting, but I'm also worried about the fact that like I'm not even going to get my own funeral because we died out in the middle of nowhere in South Dakota. I think I have a bar. Yeah, I've got a bar, so I'm going to send a text to Paul and let him know what's going on.
It may be hard to believe, but we survived.
Damp.
Goodbye, haunted abandoned house in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota. You shall not be missed.
Right, we are currently in the Badlands, and we're like all cowboys. Oh shit. Right, we're just so there are a few Why is this like in every job interview I've ever had? Wait, let me pose myself. I don't know how you can do it like so naturally.
The organ is rising.
As we began seeing more and more scenes out of westerns, it slowly dawned on us that we were getting close to our next stop, and our enthusiasm returned.
Not long before we turn off the interstate and head on to Highway 16. It's also starting to get quite cold as well, and we disconnected the heater because we broke it. Sorry, I broke it. So Connor's already got a freaking jacket and hat on, and I'm starting to feel a little bit chilly in my toes. So we might have to pull over, get a sleeping bag and sort of blankets, and yeah, cuddle up a little bit. Connor's gonna have to scooch over here and join me.
Beds and hot showers were a measly 100 miles away, but between us and that stood the Bighorn mountain range, and with it the first explanation of why tourists don't tend to travel there as early in the season as we were.
The road is icy as heck. Yeah, still got 28 miles left on this road.
Really hoping that doesn't get worse.
I was within minutes of turning around when we noticed the snow had turned to rain again, and despite the descent having a few quirks of its own, by 11 PM we were back on flat ground, ready to enjoy our luxury farm cabin for the night.
Fuck this! Fuck this! Oh, actually fuck this. I've got out-of injuries.
Once again, we're going to AutoZone because we need a new radiator cap because that started leaking now. But other than that, considering what we went through last night and what we put the car through last night, I'd say it's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Hopefully now we're going to make our way over to Yellowstone and buy a new radiator cap and have no issues whatsoever.
Look at that ahead of us.
Fall to my knees when it's thunder. Hide it right out of the way. Take all of my seas that are sunder. The tide will be out any day. And all of my sorrows that leave till tomorrow. We could just stay in this place.
Right, we're in Yellowstone.
Yellowstone, we are here. This is one of the biggest checkpoints of our journey. We made it nearly 2,500 miles so far.
I hoped I would find there'd be some kind of sign only then.
Definitely not the prettiest campsite I've seen ever, but functional.
Right, day 2, Yellowstone.
Had a very cold night's sleep, and now today we are going to the Tetons.
Lost track of time once again.
It's a fucking bear. It's a fucking bear.
Despite the ongoing battle with the elements and our kerosene stove, it was hard not to be moved by the majesty of the surrounding landscape. But with a hostel booked in Seattle on the 22nd and 800 miles to cover before then, we had to press on.
It's a shame that most of the trails are closed off for the season, but regardless, we've still seen some spectacular views. We're going to go and enjoy another one now, hopefully.
So, less than 48 hours after arriving, we borrowed a hotel shower, packed our bags and set off once more, crossing the state line into Montana.
You look great, mate. The
It marked the biggest success of the road trip so far. We'd made it a third of the way in less than 10 days, and in doing so had proven to ourselves we could overcome anything the vast landscape of America had in store for us.
We just checked in at City Hostel, Seattle.
Yeah, we get some food, we get some beers.
The mileage had begun to take its toll on the car, however, and although I missed out on a second day in the city, I was at least lucky enough to buy the last Lincoln Mark V radiator in the state of Washington. According to the cashier, anyway.
$18 for a very small amount of salmon.
Better be the best salmon in the world. They did say it probably could be. What is cool about this city, it's got all those buildings and it's got that big fuck off mountain.
Yeah.
So cool.
It was safe to say we got the recharge we needed, an opportunity to wander around being tourists and put our laundry through the wash. But although the seafood was good and the views impressive, I felt I didn't really get to know Seattle, less so than even Chicago, and our feet were on the ground for barely 5 minutes before we were on our way again.
Okay, so we didn't do an update last night, but this morning we are here in Elwood Dam RV Park, which is about 2 hours west of Seattle. And I realised that whilst we were in Seattle, I didn't really speak much about it, which is weird because I've really wanted to go there for years now, and I had all these built-up expectations of what it should be like, which actually I think ended up working against us because we were walking around, and I was walking around waiting for the moment when the mental picture that I had of Seattle would appear in front of us. So I'm going to stop doing that from now on because we're doing this road trip so quickly and we're going through these places so quickly that we can't afford to have expectations. It's much better, I think, to go in with an open mind and enjoy the place for what it is rather than waiting for it to become what you think it should be, because it probably won't ever do that. Not to mention the fact that it wastes a lot of time. Speaking of which, I've been sitting around here for about an hour now and I think Connor's getting a little bit impatient, so let's get a move on. The following 5 days were spent driving south on Route 101, also known as the Pacific Coast Highway. Our next destination was San Francisco. After Yellowstone, I assumed I was prepared for whatever this scenery could throw at me. But then we came within sight of the ocean.
We are just off the 101 highway on Ruby Beach. And we just drive along, looking for a place to camp, and we just went down here. Down this. Cool.
Down the west coast, it's day 13 of the road trip. Now we don't really have a plan, we're just going to see where the road takes us, all the way to California.
Look at that. Look at that colour. A little bit sandy, but fucking tasty, man.
It's day 15 of the road trip.
It's also chilling with all the other horses. It looks like a horse as well, it doesn't even look like a zebra. Look at it. Look, he just painted some stripes on him. Right, mate? How you doing?
So, Connor, where are we?
Guess. San Francisco, that is. Golden Gate Bridge.
Golden Gate.
Golden Gate Bridge. There we are. And it's pretty impressive.
It was a glamorous first impression. But thankfully, our budgetary restrictions didn't keep us fooled for long.
It's a pretty sketchy neighbourhood, once again. Not as bad as Chicago, mind you.
Nah, it's fine. It's fine.
You leave stuff in the car cabin?
Well, we don't need like clothes and stuff, but...
Okay, before you go to sleep, I'd go throw it in the truck, just to be safe, so you don't get your window popped out.
It was also the usual situation with our schedule, so when we realised the plans in our book mostly consisted of one tourist hotspot after another, we were a bit frustrated we hadn't put more effort into researching things to do before starting the road trip.
Connor and I have decided to stop doing the touristy thing, or at least do something a little bit less touristy. And we're going to check out the ferry marketplace, which apparently is quite good. A little bit more than Pier 39, which was actually pretty terrible, to be honest.
If you like corn dogs and fucking pretzels,
Yeah,
it's really
magic
good.
shows,
But
Are you sure this is a good idea?
delicious.
That should be the next idea for our show. I can give you the best places in all of America for free samples. Okay, we are in the Heights. What's it called?
Haight-Ashbury.
That's it. Thanks, Connor. We're in the Haight-Ashbury area, which is like hipster central of San Francisco.
Hippie central.
We're gonna have a wander around, look at some of the shops, and see what all the hipsters are saying.
Hippies.
Hippies.
Aided by some local ale and a recommendation for good food in the Sunset District, our mood was lifted by dinner time, but I was still hoping the second day would be an improvement.
About to do the 49 mile scenic drive around the whole city and see everything it has to offer.
Is that the church you said? Yeah, it is. It looks like a mosque.
Yeah.
We don't look touristy.
We should pretend we're in the Google car.
Perhaps it was the weather, or our new ability to jump in and out of random locations at a much more efficient pace, but somehow we felt more immersed.
Seagull! Is there anything more American than that? Hand for scale.
Car.
Thank you.
What year?
78.
Wow, that's great.
This is a freaking steep hill.
Oh, my friend's doors.
I live mine, never mind. Jesus. I'm surprised it made it without having reached the top.
Yep. The curve start.
Yeah, this is it, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Do you want to hop out?
Yeah.
I was still trying to hold myself accountable to the promise I'd made in Elwha Dam and not set too many expectations for how this city should be, which, given it was the background of so many movies I'd seen, was quite challenging.
The Lincoln made it down Lombard Street with no problems, which is a pretty big achievement, and I'm very proud of it.
But of course, unsurprisingly, it turned out this time I didn't have anything to worry about. Unlike Seattle, I could almost feel the nostalgia of old family films, as if simply by looking out over the bay I'd switched from DVD back to VHS tapes. And being the sucker I am for such notions, by the end of the day I was completely sold on San Francisco.
Look better than the New Orleans one.
This was, to all intents and purposes, the halfway point of the journey, and turning back towards New York it felt different somehow, like the main part of the adventure was already over.
Next stop. Fuel station, actually. Stop's the fuel station. But after the fuel station, next stop.
Another fuel station.
True. There's only 175 miles. June Lake is our next port of call.
However, it's possible that once again I was assuming too much.
Right, things have taken a turn for the worst. Stop it! It's just doing its own thing. We don't know what the hell's going on. I'm trying to find out with wires and everything, but there's no rhyme or reason to it.
I reckon we should just try and see how far we can get, if we can get there.
Tonight would be good.
Yeah. It looked like a super horror movie, didn't it? I tried to time it, and each one was a different length of time.
Yeah, completely random. using the foot switch seems to affect it as well. So I don't want to use the foot switch. I don't want to hit any bumps in the road. I just want to trundle along and hope it doesn't do it again.
Just another 74 miles to go.
Yeah, exactly. If it cuts out, we'll just brake.
So, it looks like we're driving in the daytime from now on.
Wherever 95.5 is, wherever it is, it's a weird radio station.
It's cheese. No, you know that.
We definitely need to sort out that headlight issue. That is a big problem.
Yeah.
It was immediately forgotten about. Truthfully, I'm not sure if it was more devastating to lose an entire morning or our $30 camping fee, but either way we intended to make up for it.
Doing 50 on a gravel road. Whoa, guys, here's a hill.
Oh, God.
Brian had recommended the area all the way back in September, and on his suggestion we visited Mono Lake, some local hot springs, and even attempted some actual exercise for a change. It was a shame to have had to rush, but being at June Lake so early in June did have its charms, such as having the campground to ourselves.
There's Marcus fooling himself that he's actually having a good time.
It's like I've got pins and needles in my back.
Isn't pins and needles the first sign of hypothermia? Pretty sure it is.
Not the sun though.
I mean, yeah, you got the sun, but you're submerged in fucking 2-degree water.
The next stop was Las Vegas. For the sake of the car's well-being, and possibly our own, we were avoiding Death Valley by skirting around to the north. The irony being that due to its tourism, the highway through Death Valley would have actually been better maintained. Nevertheless, our route was a few miles shorter and a few degrees cooler, though I don't think I would have had much fun either way.
Well, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
How you doing? My name's Deputy Worley, Knight County Sheriff's Office. You know what the speed limit in town is?
No, actually, I'm afraid not.
25.
Ah,
You were doing
yes.
40. That's why I pulled you over.
Yep.
Can I see your driver's license?
Yes.
Registration for the vehicle? So you bought a car in New York City and you're...
Yeah.
Cheaper than getting a rental car.
Maybe.
All right, I'll be back in a moment. Please stay
All
in
right.
the vehicle.
Thank you.
Sir?
Yes.
I'm not going to issue a citation to you.
Really?
I want you to know that the fine on it's $245.
Wow, that's very kind of you.
You need to slow down and pay attention.
I can't thank you enough. Thank
Right,
you.
sir.
Needless to say, when Vegas came into view and with it the prospect of working air conditioning, we were ecstatic, though it may have also had something to do with the sunroof being open all day.
Look at this freaking Disneyland!
There's a roller coaster over there. Of course there is a roller coaster next to the casino. Oh, this is strangely incredible. I don't know.
This is, isn't it? Wow!
Oh, there's the Statue of Liberty.
Why is that so funny? I don't know why it is. It just is. Okay, so we've been in Las Vegas for about 5 minutes, and already we are just stunned at just the gruesomeness of how appallingly decadent and just disgusting everything is.
But it's impressively decadent.
It's impressively
It's
disgusting,
like...
though. It's just like, you can't help but just stare at everything.
It's like when you watch shit TV. You can't look away. Reality. This is the equivalent of reality TV.
Yeah. Here is where we are staying. Look at that.
Oh yeah.
That's not the best place that I've seen in Las Vegas, and I don't know what it is.
Maybe it doesn't have a gym.
I don't think it does. I don't think it has much of anything, to be honest. Let's go and find out.
But I mean, the strip is fucking. It's there.
Yeah, look, there's New York World. Don't like New York, mini New York. It's so shitty, isn't it?
The Empire State is so stubby. That's it.
Well, yep. I've been in worse places. Chicago was worse. We saw a pretty awesome performance with Andrea Bocelli in the background, and now we're listening to who is this?
Who is this? The Beatles. Ah, Lucy the Sky Divers. One of the most famous songs.
There is little to describe this city that hasn't already been said. I only remember thinking the presence of the surrounding desert made everything feel a bit temporary, as if it could all be knocked down with one moderate sandstorm. But even that disappeared after a few drinks, and making our way up and down the strip confirmed what so many people had told me. Las Vegas is one of those places you have to see at least once in your lifetime.
Confused. Sorry.
It's fine, I do that with you all the time. But yeah, car was running kind of hot, and twice now today it's just sort of died and it won't start again. We're going to let it cool down, see if it starts up again. If it does and it works, then we know it's something to do with the heat. If not, then I think we've got something wrong with our fuel system. So we're going to wait for it to cool down and see what it says. But yeah, a bit of a pain. There are worse places to break down though. We could have broken down yesterday in the middle of nowhere, so...
You have a pickup in the tank, and somewhere in line there will be a fuel filter.
Right, okay, look up the nearest auto zone, I guess.
Alright, so it is Monday, the 4th or 5th of June, and earlier today we said we were having some problems with the car. Went to this AutoZone and bought a fuel pump for $21, and I've never had such a miserable experience as installing that part. I finally installed it around 10 PM, and then we turned the engine on and it was working, the fuel pump works, but fuel was gushing out of this hose going into it. So Connor has gone off to a motel which wouldn't answer the phone, and when he got there he found out that there was no one there, which explains why. So what he's currently doing is getting an Uber to come and pick me up, and then what we're going to do is take an Uber into town a little bit and find a motel which is around $40. In a fairly nice dodgy neighbourhood to leave the car in overnight, so business as usual basically.
We ended up taking 2 taxis around that small town on the outskirts of Vegas looking for a hotel. One was fully booked, another wasn't there anymore, and according to the man on the intercom, one had a system error preventing them from opening their front door.
The only good thing that came of it is I actually got the opportunity to wash up a little bit.
I mean, shut the up. I mean, it's not...
Hang on.
It wasn't a good job.
I mean,
I'm not saying...
I did the best I could.
I'm not having a go, but...
My hair, it's just like fucking see dirt coming out of it and shit. It's just...
It's not
pretty
ideal.
disappointing, honestly. This day's been a pretty rubbish day.
Please turn the microphone on, do that.
Nope. After a somewhat lengthy process today, we are now on the road, and we're like 50 to 60% sure that the car's working. We're going to try and get to the Grand Canyon today for about 6 PM-ish, but it's like 48 degrees Celsius outside. It's like nothing I've ever been in before. It's ridiculous. I can't even freaking talk. I'm so like hot. I just want to... Yeah.
Thankfully, we were kept alert by the engine every time it made an unusual sound, which, on what would prove to be the hottest day of the road trip, was quite often. However, the miles went by smoothly, and as the scenery changed once more, our spirits began to lift.
Oh, there's another edge. Let's just put in here. It's quiet, there's nobody here, that's the best thing about it.
Yeah, fuck.
Day 22 of the road trip, and where we are right now doesn't need an introduction.
Oh, it's the...
Who was the guy in Seattle, or was it the guy in Wisconsin?
I think it was Wisconsin. No, Seattle.
As he put it, The Grand Canyon is not underwhelming at all.
Definitely not.
It was incredible. Honestly, we should have spent a whole day here, but things happen as they do. So yeah, let's hope the headlights are going to work. We haven't done anything about that yet. They're still the same. Let's see if we can make it to Monument Valley.
It's about 1 a.m. We've just had maybe one of the worst meals of my life. The kerosene stove leaked, and it made our noodles taste of kerosene. But we made it to Monument Valley. I think you could just about see the silhouettes. And we're in what appears to be a back garden with a tent in it. So we're going to kip down for the night in there and pay the extra $15 for the use of the tent, because at this point neither of us have the energy to pitch our own. It was a fitting end to what had been the worst 2 days of the entire year, but with images of the Grand Canyon circling in my mind, I fell straight asleep, confident the worst of our troubles were behind us.
Right. Police guy in the background recording.
Okay, so it is 10 o'clock in the morning here in Nevada, and we are in a police station car park because someone stole my car this morning. Long story short is that this guy came into the tent this morning going, "Oh, can I borrow the keys real quick to move it?" And I assumed he just wanted to move the car out of the way. Basically, he had just had a mental breakdown and stole my car, drove into this town, which is like about 20 minutes away from the campground. My phone was in the car and we called it and he actually answered. So it was clear that he wasn't really thinking straight. The car was found just over in a field over there. I've just had to give a statement telling the police what happened. I've just had an interview explaining the fact that we were calling up the police in Utah because the state line's just there, and I just hope that we've given a statement. Hopefully we don't need to come back here. Yeah, so that was an interesting experience this morning, being woken up at 7:45. I still haven't caught up on my sleep from the past 2 nights from working on the car in Las Vegas.
And now it's back, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's 10 o'clock now. We've had the car stolen, and it's still quite early.
It's a good start to the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was quite clear, he had some kind of mental breakdown because the police pulled him over, and at first he answered his own name, and then he pretended to be me, and then he pretended that the car was owned by
his granddad,
his cousin's granddad.
That'd be his granddad too.
Yeah. And then just basically sort of tried to make up some rubbish.
Yeah, he did say he was up for 2 days, high on cocaine, alcohol and weed.
He seemed fine when he just entered the tent.
He was so happy and smiling.
Yeah.
If my brain was in gear though, open the tent and go...
Pokes his tent in the head, pokes his tent in the head, pokes his head in the tent and goes, "Oh hey, can I borrow the keys to your car real quick?" And I was just like, "What for?" And he says, "Oh, running away, going on vacation." And he said it with a smile on his face, and in my sleep-addled state I assumed that he was just joking around and he was just going to move the car a few feet. Until I heard it driving away. Absolutely nuts.
We found out later the man had attempted to sell our luggage, including the cameras and Connor's laptop. All things considered, we'd got off pretty lightly, but there were still 10 hours of driving ahead to get to our next stop.
I have witnessed this before, the bitter sound of a closing door. But who am I to alter the river's course?
Right, we just finished in Monument. Finish looking at
everything we left unsaid. Grips me by the chest every now and then.
I just feel like this is our life now. It doesn't feel like it's going to end.
Be quite happy to do this every day if it didn't cost so much.
Yeah, innit? But you do just get accustomed to it though. I don't really miss a bed or anything. Proper beds.
Do you? I do.
I mean, it'd be nice, but I'm not craving it or anything.
Yeah.
Cause I am busy running on an ending, and caught up in a journey I'm remembering. When I find the place to go, I will have my dreams to show.
Woodland Park, Colorado is a small town at the foot of Pikes Peak on the edge of the Rocky Mountains. Originally, we weren't sure if it was a good idea to spend 3 days in such a quiet spot. I think by this point, the debate was settled.
Throwing down a load when we need rest. Watch the sun hanging low against the Midwest. Aching in my heart, I'd say home is half the world away. The hills are turning blue above the burnt trees. The ocean just a whisper on the calm breeze. Part of me that I'll have them where I cannot go again.
They charge $15 per person. Per person to drive up a road. Hello, mate. That is one hell of a view. Let's just hope we can make it all the way up in one piece. So it happened, the engine ran out of air in the most inconvenient part. Oh shit. That was a stressful few minutes right there. The car was chugging and stalling in the most treacherous bit of the whole climb. But we're still going.
Back when promises were kept, before the time that I would spend searching for the things I thought I'd left.
We're now making the journey down the mountain. It's a fairly arduous run, full of tight hairpins and bends and no barriers. If you drive straight off here, you are going down a very steep slope to your death. Yep. And as we know, the brakes on this car don't work that great. Connor is loving life right now.
I'm fucking terrified.
Cause I am busy running on an ending, caught up in a journey I'm remembering. When I find the place to go, I will have my dreams to show. You and I will come out of a hiding and move along a road forever winding.
Right, we're stopping here in Texas for the night, in this lovely, overgrown, quiet rest area.
Watch the sun hanging low against the Midwest. Aching in my heart, I'd say home is half the world away. The hills are turning blue above the burnt trees. The ocean just a whisper on the calm breeze. Part of me that I'll have them where I cannot go again.
"600 miles after leaving the Rocky Mountains, we had arrived in Oklahoma City. It had now been exactly 4 weeks since we left New York.
So many keys don't work.
Oklahoma City's cool, isn't it?
I'm a big fan of it, actually. I don't know anything about it, but it's pretty cool, especially this place as well.
We want to hear you loud. We want them to hear you down in Norman, okay?
This is awesome.
I gotta tell you, I came out here the first time 5 years ago for the earning meeting from the Southern California. I was moving up the movie. Love y'all, really do.
So the Oklahoma City bombing memorial, it's quite a solemn experience and it's a very pretty place. And then you walk next to it and there's a museum where they're charging $10 for a ticket.
What are they selling in the gift shop as well? Like,
yeah, I don't know. But the memorial itself is something beautiful.
Yeah, it's really well done.
It's good to see. I'm glad we saw it. Shame we didn't see it at night, but still. Alright, okay, so that's it for Oklahoma City. Now we're finding our way out of here to Memphis.
By this point, the end of the road trip was something we could almost feel, which I think came from knowing the best was behind us and, in a strange way, that it was already over. It's funny to think we were unironically saying things like, only another 1,500 miles to go, but that's what America does to you. The modern highways and interstates condense time and space, turning hours into minutes and allowing you to comprehend, if only for a short while, the vastness of the world and just how small you are in it.
Tomorrow, we will see Nashville with accommodation. Connor's going to have to point out signs and stuff to me because I can't see crap, and the only thing I've got is my sunglasses. I suppose it's pretty bright actually in the city. I could drive with these, but it probably isn't a good idea.
Hold on, let me get
I'll get all the quarters together to pay for the parking ticket because we're so poor.
No, so
and car died. Alright, Connor, see you later.
Had enough.
There are probably few better ways to get to know someone than travelling in this way for this amount of time, and by now Connor and I knew nearly everything there was to know about each other. But although it was satisfying to see how effortlessly I could now pitch a tent, the claustrophobia was starting to set in a little.
I'm going to try and get some more sleep.
Are you? Oh, okay.
I didn't sleep for very long. I think it was about 2 hours.
Yeah, really? Alright, that's fair. It's for such a stupid reason as well. I can fly, just get that little.
This vehicle's too hot, to be fair.
Okay.
So I can get super easily.
Yeah. Left anything? Have you seen anything?
What do you notice?
Is that water still on the roof? We're off to a flying start this morning. Water was still on the roof.
The humidity was stifling as we arrived in Nashville, but it was still a last hurrah, as from that point onwards our route would be retreading old ground. I think internally we both had decided it was the unofficial conclusion of the road trip, but weren't quite ready to admit that yet. Instead, we spent up the last of our money into the early hours of the morning, listening to live music up and down Broadway.
I really want to get a waffle.
Let's get a waffle.
I can get a waffle with my last $10. The road trip ended that day with 2 heart attacks.
Simultaneously.
Simultaneously.
Simultaneously. For fuck's sake.
Oh yeah, that's true, yeah.
What are we doing? Speaking of Americans.
We made one more pit stop in Philadelphia and said goodbye to Brian and his family, though even that was a bit rushed and, unsurprisingly, quite disorganised.
Alright, so we just spent the night in Brian's grandmother's house, and we had to say thank you because she treated us so well.
Amazingly.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Delicious food, and Bill as well, who was there with her. Just great laugh. It was great to talk to you both, and thank you for having us again.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to break something else off at this. Oh no, okay, we're good. That's looking a little bit neater now.
It's funny how you and Brian both sort of like, you both work the same way, but both do rigs and, you know, like...
I'm glad you say that, because I find it very kind of
Oh, he's amazing.
Yeah,
all the stuff
he does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Inspirations.
Yeah.
Well, that's clean enough, I guess.
No, seriously, yeah, both of you actually inspired me not to be so fucking lazy.
Good.
I'm serious, man. I'm serious. I'm gonna go back, start fucking doing something towards the future.
Arriving back in New York was like greeting an old friend, and another one of those moments I'd imagined would play out in a certain way, a memorable cinematic ending to round everything off with.
So Marcus, what do you think of the car?
What?
Car, we made it.
Oh, we made it. What do we think of us? We made it. We did 10,000 miles in 10... The tree decides to load a load of acorns onto us. It is time to unload all of our stuff and give Paul his camping equipment back. Connor's going back to England. This is
the end. This is the face of the end.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. It was a pleasure travelling with you, Connor.
It was a pleasure with you as well. And onwards.
Alright, this is my last signing in. I guess that means it's a signing off in America because I'm here at the airport to catch a flight back to England. And yeah, I don't really have any cool words or anything, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Thanks, Paul.
See you, man. Good luck.
All right.
We get there, right?
Business as usual then. But after everything we'd been through, I don't think anything else would have been quite as perfect. In August 2016, I made the decision to film everything I could in order to make a movie about my year abroad. And in many ways, I'd succeeded, preserving conversations that would otherwise have been forgotten and fragments of life in America that bring back memories so clear they can almost be touched. But for the longest time, it wasn't enough, because I was choosing to ignore those other moments, the ones that stick with you, which are not only things a camera will always fall short on, but are unforgettable for that very reason. So, this is what I have now. This was us. This was America.
I'll see you on the other side. If it's not too much to hide.
This is my first signing in thing on my video diary in America because we have just arrived in Stony Brook.
Basically, we've got no agenda. We're kind of just roaming around. I think we need to try to tell them at some point.
Boston, we are here. We made it. It is 3:29 p.m.
We're here by the beach and we're trying to find out what are we doing actually.
Alright, we're going to New York. We're going to do it to Brooklyn Bridge to get a video of Marcus's brothers fucking fucked up.
That was good enough. Yeah. I'm at my friend Paul's house who helped me buy a car. It's working. Boston at midnight. We made it. We got our friends.
We're going on an adventure.
We just finished taking some shots from Monument Valley, and now, after getting delayed by the car getting nicked, we're on our way to Colorado Springs.
Fucking hell, that came out of nowhere.
Right, we're in the Teton National Park.
San Francisco, that is.
This is amazing.
Pretty incredible.
And where we are right now does not need an introduction.
I was afraid of losing the person I thought I was, that if I took what I had documented and turned it into something tangible and real, my only memories would be of that, and I would forget what it actually felt like. But I realise now a small part of the person I was will always exist, and if I take a moment to look, I'll find him driving in the evening sun, 5,000 miles away on the other side of the Atlantic.
Myself in the place I made as the embers of my memories fade. Under the roof I once called home, Will I be a stranger in this old town? So I search for paradise. I fought so hard to pay the price. When I could see for miles and miles, I was standing alone on a lonely island. Thinking back to the world I lived, I'll call there again someday. I live for the beginning, from the end I found. Know that the feeling hurts from now. I hate to go back to where I was before, and how I had so much more with you, but it has gone too soon. Back to the meadow, and all I see is gold. I run back to the meadow, and all I see is gold. Run back to the meadow, all I see